everybody, welcome to Inside the Justice League. I'm Jason Hillhouse. With me this evening is Bruce Timm, Dan Reba, James Tucker, and Rich Fogel. We're going to get the inside scoop on what went into Justice League Season 1. Your questions, my questions, their questions. Discussions are going to happen starting now.
Working together, we saved the planet. And I believe that if we stayed together as a team, we would be a force that could truly work for the ideals of peace and justice.
How did you guys decide that, okay, after Batman Beyond and you did Batman, Superman, Batman Beyond, and Justice League seemed to be kind of the next evolutionary step?
Job security.
Probably going all the way back to Batman, and then certainly after we'd done the Superman show, we got that question a lot from the fans was, when are you going to do Justice League next? There was a lot of interest in doing the Justice League. Since time immemorial, people have just loved to have their heroes team up for some reason. I don't know why, but they do. And I'm on record as being kind of hesitant about doing it just because I knew how difficult a show it would be to do, and I was right.
Something that we couldn't have done any earlier because the technology wouldn't have been there for it.
It was a learning curve for us to figure out how to do bigger and better set pieces.
It was different in terms of the way we approached the stories. It was different in the way that we approached the characters, and all the things we had learned along the way, suddenly we had to up them 10 times. And staging action for Batman, or 1 or 2 characters, and suddenly you have 7, at least 5 at any given time. How are you going to come up with a story every week that is going to challenge that group?
Right.
Sure.
And it was tough.
And you've got a finite number of really mega villains in the DC Comics roster who can literally, realistically take on the Justice League.
One of the things that's hard about the Justice League as a group was that these are not characters, by and large, that were created to go together. And to find a way to mix that together so that they were a cohesive unit that worked together and that they didn't overlap each other too much in terms of powers, it was a real challenge.
My home Thanagar is a warlike world. There, one must strike first.
That 7th spot could have been Hawkman or the Atom or Aquaman or whoever else you want to name. Sure. And of all those candidates, we thought Hawkgirl was the most interesting, and I think that turned out to be the case.
Throw another girl in the group, and that shakes it up a little bit, yeah, because, everybody can't be crushing on Wonder Woman.
That's right.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight.
The Green Lantern wasn't a hard decision to make, though, because of the fact that in the mythology, there are a whole bunch of Green Lanterns. And so we didn't feel like we needed to make a huge explanation of it. I think in the case of Justice League, we ignored a lot of that continuity.
For the first season, we'd made a deliberate decision to not have any of their supporting characters because we didn't have the time to play with them. And we wanted to really establish that the Justice League was its own show.
In order for the chemistry in our group to work, we really needed to initially jettison all of the supporting characters from the other things so that it forced the heroes to interact with each other.
Why do we have to ride in this rust bucket? What's wrong with your ring?
Lady, the galaxy's a big place. I need my Navicomputer to find Warworld.
He's got a point.
Great. Take his side.
I'm not taking his side. I'm just saying.
I'm wrong again.
You guys, for this show, I know, sat down and actually did kind of plot out and created more or less a Bible, right? Like in terms of you knew kind of the Hawkgirl situation going in.
We planned the Hawkgirl thing from day one, yeah.
Right.
In the Bible, because we knew we were going to be using the Bible for publicity purposes, we actually wrote a fake backstory for her.
Right.
It was a disinformation campaign on Hawkgirl.
I mean, we didn't have the whole betrayal story completely figured out yet, but we did know from early on that she was going to fall in love with Green Lantern, that they were going to have a romance, and that she was going to betray the League.
Everybody expected us to team Superman and Wonder Woman because that's the sort of more obvious way to go.
But why would we do that? Because Superman's going to be with Lois. I don't understand.
No, it's so not a good choice.
Fans are so bizarre.
It's not a good choice.
That's what people think. Like the two strongest people get together. It's like the high school, the quarterback and the cheerleaders. Like that's what's going to.
So it was sort of like working against the grain that sort of helped make that spark.
Yeah.
And that idea actually came from Paul Levitz.
Paul Levitz at DC Comics. Yeah, he's the publisher of DC Comics.
How much of that is dictated, here's the parameters, this is the version of Aquaman we need to do?
They're pretty good about letting us do what we want to do. They're
Right.
pretty open to different interpretations of their characters. They did not insist that we use the hook-handed, long-haired Aquaman. That was something our own initiative went to.
Yeah, I think I just doodled a sketch. I mean, our version is slightly different than what they were doing, because
Sure.
at the time they were doing basically Aquaman was King Arthur.
Right.
And we were thinking, He's a barbarian.
What's taking so long? I must return to Atlantis. Sit tight, Your Highness. We'll tell you when it's safe to go. You presume too much.
Whatever, if there's a chance to throw in a comic book reference, it's, you know, and get away with it and not looking too geeky. It's
And hopefully to do it in such a way that if you don't get the joke,
Right.
it doesn't take you out of the show.
A good idea is a good idea no matter where it comes from. And, you know, we would be making more work for ourselves if we went out of our way to ignore the things in the comic books.
Allow us to introduce ourselves. Justice Guild, roll call. Catman.
Black Siren.
Green Guardsman. Tom Turbine. The Streak.
Let's get this painful part out of the way. Everybody,
What part of this hasn't been
everybody.
painful?
Well,
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry, the most painful part of this out of the way. Favorite episode, season 1.
It's easy for me.
See, look,
what's your favorite?
Look at Tucker.
Legends Part 1.
This can't be real.
Tell me about it. I almost busted a gut during that roll call routine.
It's not that. It's the Justice Guild. They're comic book characters.
The animation on that is particularly good, and I designed half the models for that show.
Almost all of the characters.
Yeah.
And it was a really audaciously comic booky show.
Can't you work any faster?
Maybe Enemy Below. I had an idea that the whole court intrigue story would be almost Shakespearean in the way that it played out and the motives of the villains and things like that.
Let's see your identity papers now.
Sorry, but my identity's a secret. Chicks dig that whole man of mystery thing.
Well, they picked my 2 favorite ones, but really, actually, Savage Time in part 2, I think, because I never really thought we'd be able to do a World War II story. It was kind of a forbidden subject. You just didn't deal with it, and we found a way to deal with it and do it in a fantasy way and get the Blackhawks in there.
Rhaegar meets his greatest foe, the man from Krypton.
Were there any that people just didn't respond to?
Everybody
They
hated Warworld.
Problem with Warworld all comes down to the end of it.
Absolutely.
At one time we had Superman kicking everybody's butt. You came in and said, we've seen Superman kick people's butt before, let's do something different.
Probably shouldn't have had Draga in the story if we really, well, you know, here's another thing, I mean, that brings up a good point too. Season 1, we got called on the carpet for making Superman a wimp.
Yeah.
And guilty as charged.
Sure, yeah.
We didn't know we were doing it. We were actually kind of using it as a kind of a dramatic crutch early on. It's like, oh, well, hey, if Superman can get taken down really, right away, well, then now this is a really bad threat, and now the rest of everybody else is all in trouble. We didn't realize it had become like a recurring gag until we started getting the internet comments and everybody's saying, well, wait a minute, why is Superman such a wimp now? And it's like, oh, you know what? There's a pattern.
This watchtower will act as an early warning system for detecting other threats of invasion from space.
And it also has a fully stocked kitchen. Ice mocha?
I always think of season 1 as kind of our shakedown cruise. We were working really hard, and it was a hard show to do. But on the other hand, I think just the enormity of the project was kind of daunting, and we kind of let it cow us a little bit. We kind of let it intimidate us to the point where we made mistakes based on fear.
Well, and also, this was the first show where I think we let the style of the show take a back seat.
That was a conscious decision, which I think was a mistake.
And it was, yeah, and we eventually corrected that. And we thought this was a way of making it more real world.
Because of the more superheroic things that were happening in the show, we felt that we should ground the show in a little bit more of a believable reality.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. As always, it's been a real treat for me. Thank you for watching at home. That's it this time for Inside the Justice League.
Showtime, everybody! Live and in color, the end of the Justice League.
Don't make me laugh.
It's no joke.
Storyboards are a blueprint for the animators. It's a visual interpretation of the script. It has all the information that an animator will need. Camera directions, effects, the timing is... The script is really the starting point, but in terms of visualization, the storyboard is what really gets the ball rolling.
Joker, you nauseate me.
Oh, he's going to miss the show.
On a typical show, we'll get the script, and I'll have to break it down to decide who gets what part. You cast the storyboard the same way you kind of cast the actors, because they really are acting with a pencil. And there's some people that are more your action-oriented, and then there are others that are more acting-oriented. You work with the strengths of the artists.
Each of you is the best in the world at what you do, and I have need of your unique services.
Storyboard artists come from all kinds of backgrounds. A lot of times comic book artists, because they're already used to telling stories on paper. But it takes special kinds of comic book artists, ones that really, really absorb film and understand how things move, because comic books don't move.
The beauty of a storyboard is that it will never actually be seen on the screen. That's the one big difference between doing a comic book and a storyboard. Traditionally, we have 3 storyboard artists per episode. We usually break the show up into 3 acts. Each storyboard artist is responsible, usually, for 1 act. And that comes out to about anywhere between 150 to 200 pages of drawings per act. A storyboard can be very, very rough, and in some places it's actually better if it is rough.
The artists tend to draw things their own ways. You want to have it be on model. You want it to look like what the show is supposed to look like. If the guy really had to draw it exactly that way, it would take a lot longer.
Generally for us, it's a couple of weeks to rough and a couple of weeks to clean up the final board. We generally don't ask them to make things too tight, because that kind of limits overseas animation studios. It's a tricky thing. You don't want to draw too much and you don't want to draw too little. You just want to draw enough to give them the essence of what we want the scene to be, or what the cartoon should look like.
The best at what you do. What was I thinking?
We did everything we could.
Did you? Did you fight like your lives depended on it? Did you fight to the last man?
You get what you pay for, Luthor.
The vocal track really helps for when you're acting out the way the characters are actually going to emote in the show. If you're just going off of the script, that's okay, but if you actually have the dialogue track, you can listen to their vocal performance, and it really does make a difference, because whenever we can, we like to act out the characters as much as possible on the storyboard.
You slipped up, and you're going down hard.
We find that it's much better to act to the voice. You have more control of the drawing when you have something in your head already.
It's basically like creating a comic book version of the recording script. It's bringing the story to life. So basically what you see on the screen is pretty much something that was figured out at a storyboard stage. And now we're going to talk about the process of using storyboards for animation.
I'm going to enjoy this.
This is a section of a storyboard where Green Lantern's beam shoots in, trying to encase the Shade. Shade generates shadows from his cane. The description here is DX Green. That's how we call for the Green Lantern effects and the bottom-lit green halo. Shade's shadows stop the green sphere from forming around him, so it pushes it back. The shadows push the green beam OS. OS means off-screen. The shadows retract into the cane. Shade says, "Let me get us out of here." Luthor watches the battle. Shade lifts his cane. He just says, "Battle here." That's just a simple description of the action. There's Superman fighting Ultra Humanite. There's Solomon Grundy with the Flash spinning around him. There's Star Sapphire, the purple aura glowing around her. Hawkgirl is smashing the aura. Green Lantern is floating with his green aura around him. All of that in one shot. Luthor, angry. Shade looks at Luthor OS again, off screen. He raises his cane, and the shadows spill out of the cane and fills the frame to black. We cut to Batman being overcome by poison because he's just been bitten by Copperhead. Shadows creep in. Batman falls to the ground as the shadows flow over him.
Luthor, they're too well organized.
Let me get us out of here. It's either that or prison again.
All right, just do it.
The storyboard is the show. It literally is the show. If you gave, the same script to two different storyboard artists, you're going to get two completely different versions of the same story, right? So the storyboard literally nails down in visual terms exactly what the story is.
I kind of like to allow a board guy to have some freedom and play with it first before I get my fingers in it and start messing with them. You've got to explain things and you've got to get the ball rolling and make sure it's on the same page. And Bruce and James are always there to tell you what they want in the show and how they envisioned it because they're very close to the scripts.
The storyboard is the literal blueprint of what the actual episode will be, even more so than the script, which is not to denigrate the scripts. The scripts are all important. You can have the best action, high production value cartoon of all time, but if the story's no good, it's not a good cartoon.
You get the information and you try to get it out to people and so that they can understand what the producers want. And if they don't get it right, then that's my job, is to go and tweak it and make it work, and it'll all be one cohesive vision.
Mission accomplished.
Show Justice League, you automatically think, okay, you're going to see Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, and then the other ones as well. And this is going to be your only time to see these characters, for the next 20 years or so in an animated cartoon, so you better get them right. So they need to kind of be their iconic, versions. We ended up going back and coming up with an all-new Batman design. It was very faithful to the comics. For the sake of it, we kind of toyed with his design a little bit, gave him a little bit longer ears. They flare out to the sides a little bit more rather than being swept back. Gave him back his highlight on his black, leather parts. Put little tiny heels on the bottoms of his boots, which he'd never had before in our animated version. That, if anything, that was probably a subliminal nod to Batman Beyond, who had heels on the bottoms of his boots.
We chose wisely when we offered you the ring. Thank you, John Stewart.
John Stewart was the one Green Lantern in the comic book continuity who never ever wore a mask, because most of the Green Lanterns wore a little domino mask. So he was the first Green Lantern to say, no, forget it, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not ashamed of being a Green Lantern. I'm not ashamed of being John Stewart. So we thought that was a really important part of the John Stewart version of Green Lantern. But just purely for visual sake, we thought we needed to give him some kind of visual gimmick for his close-ups. So we came up with the idea that he's been a Green Lantern for so long that the energy of the Green Lantern has kind of infused his entire being, so that it's even in his bloodstream and it glows out of his eyes, and it certainly makes an interesting visual. James Tucker took a pass over the old Superman design, and he felt that the old design was fine, but he thought that Superman could be a little bit more rugged, a little bit more grown-up looking. So we gave him, strong cheekbones and little tiny dashes under his eyes, which are supposed to give him a little bit more of a comic book squinty look. Makes him look a little bit older than he did in the Superman the Animated Series. One of the very first comics I had possession of when I was a kid was a Hawkman issue, and it had Hawkgirl in it. And as much as I liked Hawkman, I just really fell in love with Hawkgirl. I thought she had like one of the coolest helmet shapes I'd ever seen in a comic. It was that real good mix of kind of tomboyish but feminine, and she was actually very simple to design. I mean, I basically just took her right out of the comics and didn't hardly change a thing on her. Flash was kind of a no-brainer designing. We knew pretty much right off the bat that we pretty much needed to stick to the comic version of his character. And it's a great costume, red and yellow, you can't beat it. The one note we did get from DC Comics is that they had, in recent years, they tried to go a little bit darker with his character and with his design to try to make him look a little bit more fresh and more modern. We adapted that by giving him kind of a velour kind of look to his costume, so that he's always rim-lit. He's always, the main body of his costume is a dark shadowed character, and he's got a little bit of the brighter red on the outside of his costume to kind of keep him a little bit more dynamic looking, so he's not just a real big, tomato. Martian Manhunter is a character that, it's all in how you draw it. I mean, I actually think the design looks fine. I think he looks great. He's had various, collar shapes on top of his cape. He's pretty much, just the comic book character, just adapted slightly for animation. Most of the female characters we've designed for the various animated shows have been very petite, but Wonder Woman is a very strong and powerful character. So we needed to kind of beef her up a little bit, but not go into that bodybuilder mode, which they sometimes do in the comics. We tried to infuse her with a little bit more power just in the visual than some of the other characters. She's taller, she has longer legs, smaller head. We tried to keep her feminine, but very, very strong.
Let's go home.
Drawing is not easy, you know. Sometimes it may look easy because we've been at it for so long, but every single character is a design challenge.
Hey everybody! This is something of a rarity, a bit of a treat, at least for the fans of the show. In my hand I hold the lost promo reel from Justice League. Justice League, the first mission. It's not really that. That's just something we had laying around the set. But if you keep watching this long enough, you will actually get to see Justice League, the first mission. We're here to talk about it with Mr. Bruce Timm and James Tucker. So talk us through what we're about to see here. What exactly is this?
We first started talking about doing the Justice League as a series, and we thought it would behoove us to actually have some footage of the Justice League to, you know, help our case. So we cobbled this together like really, really quickly because we were all busy and you know, we didn't actually have time to like develop the entire Justice League show because it was something that we put together like literally within a matter of weeks. 2 weeks, yeah. And so I pawned it off on James. I said, here, James, you know, if you'll agree to put this thing together, you know,
which I had nothing better to do.
Put in a good word for it and make you a producer on when we actually make the show.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know what Justice League was actually going to look like yet.
Right. Yeah, we thought it might be futuristic. We didn't know when it was going to be set, so we used models from old shows, Batman Beyond. We used the
Golem.
Actually, yeah, a Golem model from Batman Beyond in the first scene. Passers-by,
They're
incidentals.
Batman stock characters, yeah.
Yeah, and actually reused board panels. I mean, I pulled boards for action sequences, and then I just redrew the characters.
There was a version of the promo that's actually already been released to DVD as an Easter egg. The version you're going to see tonight was the Kids WB version, where they actually like having, you know, younger heroes. So we thought, okay, well, if we're going to pitch this to Kids WB, the Justice League, they're all like grown-ups. So maybe it would, you know, be a good idea to put in some younger heroes as well. So we actually cut in some footage of Robin from the Batman show, and then the other characters we put in. There's a character called Impulse from the comic books. That decision, you know, to use Impulse, conversely, that meant we weren't going to use Flash because you don't really want to have, you know, two fast guys. And then again, for the sake of diversity, we thought, well, maybe we should have a young girl as well. There aren't that really many young girl heroes in DC Comics, so we kind of created a new one. She's kind of based on the Cyborg character from the Teen Titans, but she's a female.
Some of the characters and stuff, the designs that you already had that were new, like the Luthor design is a little bit different.
We were playing him much more of an evil mad scientist guy, so it's an all-new Luthor design. The Superman design is the same. Batman, we actually didn't use any new footage of Batman. That's actually just footage we pulled from Batman, from the New Adventures of Batman. Yeah. So the John Jones and the Green Lantern model ultimately are not anything like what they ended up looking. The final versions of them are way cooler. But we did end up using the Hawkgirl design. Hawkgirl really didn't change much. Oh, and Wonder Woman is a new design too, and it's not reflective of the final version.
And it was John Stewart already, I mean, even that early.
We had pretty much already decided, I think, even at that loose stage, that it would probably be a good idea to have John Stewart in the show, even though he's wearing a mask.
We also had villains we eventually used in the series. We had Solomon Grundy.
He looked a little bit younger too.
Cheetah in it?
Cheetah? I did a version of this Cheetah.
Is that Copperhead too? There's like a kind of a weird...
Well,
he loves Copperhead.
It was supposed to be Copperhead, and then I think we ended up using a Batman Beyond model, one of the splicers from Batman Beyond.
That's right.
But eventually...
Yeah, it's done on the cheap. I mean, it was like...
we pulled from everywhere. Every piece of stock we had went into that thing, so... but, you know, considering it came together...
We never showed this footage to anybody. We sold the show with a phone call.
Rushed to put this thing together and then never showed it to anybody.
Didn't have to.
Didn't have to, and didn't want to.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad we didn't show it, because, you know, who knows?
Right.
Thank God nobody's ever seen it until now.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, it's still, I think, for the purposes of what we try to do with DVDs and stuff, I think it's a nice addition to have.
Well, it's nice to see how it could have gone really wrong. You know, I mean,
it's like, yeah, if you thought season 1 wasn't all that good, boy.
Right, this is what you could have had.
Here's the bullet we dodged.
Just kidding. But, season 1 is lovely.
It's fun, and it's fun to see, and I hope you enjoy it now.
We're here with the cast and crew of Justice League. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Jennifer Hale. I play Giganta and Killer Frost.
My name is George Newbern, and I play Superman.
I'm Maria Canals, and I play Hawk Girl.
I'm Phil Lamar, and I do the voice of Green Lantern.
Hi, I'm Susan Eisenberg, and I do the voice of Wonder Woman.
I'm Andrea Romano, and I'm the casting and voice director.
One question that I get asked a lot, and probably you guys do, is like, what do you like about voice acting versus on-camera acting?
Just less ego, less stress.
That's my experience with it, too,
Yeah.
is that there is less ego with the actors. It's not about if you're tall enough or blonde enough or skinny enough. It's really about whether you can act the role and if you can have the fun doing it. It seems that the actors are more free to just enjoy and play.
And it's a challenge to make everything happen with just your voice. You know, they can't see my face. I don't have anything else around me to help me. There's no set. And it's like, I want to make that little nuance come out in my voice. It's exciting. It's a challenge. I love it.
No, I said rotate the securing bolt counterclockwise, not clockwise.
That's what I did.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Now, I don't know. It seems in my experience, because we have a lot of guest stars on the show, and you'd know this best, Andrea, but it seems like the people with singing backgrounds or stage backgrounds are the ones who adapt most quickly to doing voice
Absolutely.
acting.
It has to do with, I think, the energy involved in stage acting, too. It's because voiceover acting is subtle, but it's not as subtle as on-camera TV or on-camera film is. It's a little bit broader, and so stage actors seem to have the presence that is required for it. And singers, too, you're right. They have the mic technique already, obviously, that's part of it. And then that seems to translate well into the voiceover field.
Because this time, I won't stop until you're just a greasy smear on my fist. Let's go.
As actors, do you treat a superhero differently from another character?
You remind me all the time. She's a warrior. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm a warrior.
Yeah. And the body language, like our body language when we're behind the mics. I mean, I know with Wonder Woman, she's very regal. I mean, I remember that from the audition. You know, there's just something, she's had a certain background and she's been raised a certain way.
Bonsoir, Wonder Woman.
Bonsoir, monsieur. I'm not slumped behind a microphone. I mean, that I always, even though I'm sitting, I am always sitting up straight. There's just a sense of who she is physically that I think we all are conscious of when we're doing it.
Then I guess you'll have to feed me. Don't be afraid, little man. I won't bite.
The next question is, how did you decide on your voice for the characters? And for me, seeing these guys with gigantic chests just made me think, well, he's got to have this,
enormous voice for this enormous chest. Whose side are you really on?
Don't you know? Well, you know, it's funny to think about that. Like Giganta, she's huge, but she's all girl. I mean, she'll kick your butt, but it's her power comes from her like girl thing, you know. And she's a warrior, but you know, her bad comes from that. Everything comes out of that. It's that dress. It's
You wouldn't hit a girl, would you? I would.
I started out sort of at one level. They used to pitch me down, and I think as I sort of got older during the series, my voice got a little lower, and I didn't have to reach for the low part. But I definitely had to really focus on Superman because you're right. He's drawn so gigantic. You see his bone structure when he gets electrocuted a lot, which is all the time. I was sitting there looking at his vertebra, going, God, that's like the vertebra of an elephant. He's huge.
Any minute now, Brainiac will explode. And guess what? You're going with him.
Is there a different energy when we have a special guest star? Because we have a lot of really cool guest stars. Do you guys feel like there's a different energy in the room?
Yeah,
very much. Yeah.
It's very exciting for me because I get to bring in actors that I admire.
That's more like it. But I'll bet you folks at home are wondering who these wild cards are.
Though it pains me to admit it, I need your help.
My word is absolute and must be accepted by all.
Ain't this great? The whole team together again, all 8 of us.
I have to look at it as who's going to come in and have fun with us and enjoy this process and not be freaked out by the fact that they've never had to work without the benefit of their physical being. Right. It's really about being able to translate to voice.
Well, I remember one episode, and I'm trying to remember who all was here, but it was just like everybody was speaking in like bass tones. There was Clancy Brown, and I think Powers Booth, and Carl was here, and Kevin Conroy was here in the studio.
Yes, and you too.
Yeah, I was doing my low voice, and I think Powers Booth. It was
like, yes, everyone was just like, well, what do you think? I don't think this.
To the point, you weren't even listening. You were just feeling it through the floor. It's like, all right, was that a good take? Okay.
Anything I took was freely offered. Maybe you should take better care of your stuff.
What are the advantages of recording as a group versus individually?
It's far better when the group is together. I think everybody does feed off of each other's energy. And I think that it's important for you two to hear what happened in the scene before, even if you're not in it, how your scene is then going to follow and what's going to make sense.
Take 157.
I was bad cop.
You're always bad cop.
Why play against type? Anyway, we got a name out of her.
That's another thing that bothers me. Aquaman and Dr. Fate.
Fate's some sort of mystic, isn't he?
That's right, and only magic could have hurt me like this. I guess I'm off the fence.
Somebody asked, what are recording sessions typically like? And I don't know, I would say they're pretty much like this, only with great big microphones in front of our
Are we allowed
faces.
to actually say?
Mayhem. It's a little bit like being a teacher in an elementary school class. You know, I find that sometimes.
I'm sure.
The really silly part is the rehearsal, because we rehearse the same day that we record. And so you have about a 40-minute rehearsal where you go through, I read the stage directions that are important to you guys to know as far as how it will affect your lines being read. And then that's when the silly stuff really happens. That's when everybody sort of gets out all the silly ad-libs and the wild things that they do. And then when we get to the actual record, then it's a little bit more down to business, and let's get it done because we have a finite time to get this done in. And so then it gets a little bit more down to business. But the more fun thing to watch is, in fact, the rehearsal.
What's the plan?
Plan? We blow that thing out of the sky.
And another big part of the recording is the action scenes. We do a lot of it in ADR, but we also do it live. I mean, a show like this has a lot of action. Guys, give us your thoughts on the action scenes and the grunts.
I think that is a whole separate day of animation. It's so physical. It's so much fun. It has become one of my favorite things.
You didn't seem comfortable.
No.
Doing the action sounds.
No.
But now you're great at it. What changed?
I just got comfortable with it. It's like I let go of the inhibitions of it, of looking silly, of being concerned, and just having fun, of really feeling the punch, of really throwing the punch. It's one of my favorite things.
Oh, crap. One more. Specificity is so key in it. Like when someone says, okay, you get hit. Well, where am I hit? In the face, in the gut, in the arm, in the leg? When am I hit? Am I shot? Am I punched? Am I stabbed? Am I kicked? What is it?
Well, if you're George, it's everything.
Right.
It's everything.
Yeah,
It's
electricity
everything.
is his special thing.
Yeah, I just got my head crushed by gigantic feet. What would that feel like? It's an extra. It's an extra. Your imagination has to
Yeah,
be.
you have
I
to
would
work
never
it.
survive that crush. So what would that sound like?
All right, now I say to you, discuss Walla.
We can't use full words if we discuss Walla.
Everybody discuss Walla in 3, 2. That's right.
Yeah,
run.
Bruce, just give us a level.
Get out of my way! The big old ball's gonna hit us. Wah!
Let's talk about what Walla really is
Let's
so that
Andreas.
everybody
Yeah.
understands what
Right.
it is. It really encompasses a large group of things. It may be a crowd scene in a stadium where everybody is just basically talking. It's the sound that you would hear if you walked into a sports stadium, and what do you hear? You hear all the crowd talking about whatever. People joke sometimes that when they do Walla, they actually say the word Walla, 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 Walla. That really doesn't work. And so sometimes we'll have to say, here's what the words are that you might be saying in this.
And it's also, we get very silly during it. I mean,
Yes.
it's that one time where we really just
cut loose.
Yeah, we do, because it's the whole group, and you bring people in, and you bring some of the writers, and Bruce will come in, and and then it's like really we're just playing.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's all fun.
And if we can't have fun making cartoons, for goodness sakes, we're just in the wrong business.
Yeah, we
So.
do. Pretty bad odds.
Yeah, they don't stand a chance.
What do you guys like best about working on Justice League?
I like the cast.
It's a good group.
Yeah.
And it's a great feeling when you'll hear Andreas say, excellent, and you look up and you see Bruce smiling.
Plus being part of a show that has such history, being
Iconic character.
being Superman, being Hawkgirl, being Wonder Woman.
The way popular culture is now, there's so much ambiguity, and the bad guys are good and the good guys are bad, and this is one of the last places in pop culture where good really is cool.
That's a wrap.
Just about.
You like it, Bruce?
Good.
That is a wrap.
Oh.
Really nice, you guys.
You didn't think I'd come here without reinforcements, did you?
Wish I'd thought of that. Oh, wait, I did.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason Hillhouse, and we're here to talk about Season 2 of the Justice League with
Butch Lukic, director.
James Tucker, producer.
Bruce Timm, producer.
Dwayne McDuffie, story editor.
What were some of the things that you learned from Season 1 that then applied to Season 2 that you think maybe smoothed out a little bit?
Well, the thing with Season 1 is that it was a decent show, but it was very safe. It was very middle of the road. It didn't really surprise you very much. We were deliberately trying not to make the show as dark as we had done with Batman and Batman Beyond and even the Superman show to a degree. We were trying to make a little bit more of an all-ages show. It's juggling a lot of characters and the archetypes that are real strong, but the personalities have a tendency to blend into one another.
Well, I'm trying to get Superman out of the way when there's stories dealing with Batman or Wonder Woman.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas, Superman could deal with pretty much everything. You didn't want to bring in Kryptonite all the time because that was just an easy hook, so.
I mean, a greater problem was not so much just Superman, but just how we staged action. The shows in the past basically dealt with one single character, and you followed that character through the action. Well, now you have 7. We tended to chop up the action in ways that weren't very dynamic.
The problem was, though, we also had to, in between fights, you have to go back and see what someone else is doing, or you lose them in the story.
We finally figured it out, but it took a while to get there.
You all right?
Peachy.
It seemed like maybe you guys were having a little bit more fun.
We did kind of open the floodgates a little bit with Twilight. I was pretty charged up after I'd done my rewrite on Twilight. I kind of went, wow, okay, we can actually do the show that we kind of see in our head, that James and I kind of saw in our head. We kind of realized, yeah, this is it. And so we can kind of go this way, and we can push the show in different directions.
We're very passive-aggressive with our fans. Whenever we know they want something, we don't give it to them. So Season 1, we didn't give them the big super villain brawl that they were expecting. So Secret Society is our version of that.
The plot gave us an excuse to have them fight, but it also gave our characters an excuse to talk about how they really feel about each other. I mean, there's a mind control element to it, but really the things that they're saying about their relationships and how they feel about each other, they all mean it. And we got to see them in ways that we couldn't see them otherwise.
You don't care about me.
What are you talking about? I'd give my life for you.
So in terms of like the story and the characters actually having something at stake.
Right. We just wanted to make things more personal for everybody.
This thing's gotta pay off sooner or later.
Man, I love this town. Dwayne, was it your idea to send him to Vegas?
I don't remember if it was my idea to send him to Vegas. I know the initial thought when we were plotting it, we were all sitting around plotting it, was we wanted to do something with a reality show. We were kind of trying to figure out how to do, the Joker and something like that.
In real time. We wanted to do the episode in real time as well.
And that's what cracked it for us. The fun for me was the Joker has trouble with, just Batman, let alone, Superman and Green Lantern and all these guys. But the fun of it was he came up with a plot that just ran them ragged.
The suspense is killing me. Of course, it's going to be the explosions that kill them.
Any final thoughts or anything that you take away when you look back at season 2?
I'm pretty proud of it. I think it was definitely a turning point for us. We were so kind of not used to failure, because all of the other shows we'd kind of come out of the gate, scoring touchdowns, and this one was a real rough first season, and so it was gratifying to be able to turn it around and then feel good about the show ourselves.
Well, with first season, we saw what we didn't want to do, which made it easier to figure out what we did want to do. But in some ways, it was like turning around an ocean liner to get there. It was a lot of hard work. Because we had that yardstick of the earlier shows, it was just twice as hard to up the ante.
Well, it's an interesting thing to look back at the progression of this show. You really can see the steps toward the direction that you ultimately wound up with. And I think it's really interesting to be able to go back and look at these things season to season like that.
Always have to be the hero, don't you?
Right back at you.
It's always good to get to come here and sit down and talk with the guys and just find out about what they were thinking while they were making the show, and to hear about the stories, where they got the ideas for the stories and all that kind of stuff. But another cool thing is to get to actually look at some of the artwork. Some of the backgrounds in particular are really cool, and you don't really get to see them on the show because there's all the action and stuff going on in front, but they're really beautiful. Let's go check out some of the art right now.
Your so-called Justice League is in violation of our martial law. They are to be considered an enemy and dealt with on sight.
What makes a background work, and especially what kind of style do you do for this kind of show?
Batman and the Superman shows both had really, really stylized backgrounds, and we thought that for Justice League, being a little bit more fantasy-oriented show, we should ground it in a little bit more of a felt reality. We would try a little bit more experimental or bizarre color schemes, anything to kind of make the backgrounds pop a little bit more.
And this show winds up being even more sci-fi than even Superman in its later episodes.
It became a trick after a while, trying to come up with different looks for different alien worlds, because we went to lots of different alien worlds and alien environments. So and each one of those had its own feel, and we didn't want them all to look like the same generic alien world. I mean, for instance, Hereafter, it takes place many, many thousands of years in the future, where our sun has gone red. The red sun is tinting the moon pink, and then the sky, the landscape gets kind of purplish. This is from Twilight. The big mandate about the inside of Brainiac's head is we wanted to have just immense scale. So we said, well, it'd be really cool if while we're panning through here, we saw one of Brainiac's spaceships parked there. So that kind of gives you an idea of how big this place actually is. This is a sequence inside the Brainiac head ship from Twilight, and the idea was we were supposed to pass by all these panels that showed different worlds that Brainiac had visited and destroyed. Well, we didn't want to design like a zillion different planets, so we basically took old backgrounds from Superman the Animated Series and even Batman Beyond. This is the world. It's from the Despero show. It's Despero's home world. His world is supposed to represent almost like a Middle Eastern kind of world. And so we definitely had like a little bit of an Arabic feel to some of the cityscapes. And this is the Terror Beyond, and that's supposed to be a quasi-mystical other dimension. It's not supposed to be like a physical plane, but of course it does have to have some kind of physicality because the characters do interact in it. This is from Starcrossed. This background, I think initially it didn't have all these cast shadows all over it. That was something we added actually while we were painting it, and I think I said, that spotlight is blasting into the room. Why don't you carry those design elements into the cast shadows into the design as well, so that it's a much more angular, busy, and threatening environment. It's all about storytelling with us.
Thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate it. I'm Jason Hillhouse with Bruce Timm. Thanks for watching.
Well, at the end of season 2 of Justice League, Star-Crossed, we pretty much blew everything up. We wrecked the Watchtower, kicked Hawkgirl out of the league.
They're in pretty bad shape. I mean, they did say that they were going to band together and continue on, but they weren't really sure how they were going to go about that. Actually, when I was writing the last part of Star-Crossed, I thought that was the end of the show.
We definitely had some issues we had to deal with in the next season, if we were going to get in a next season.
The network came back and said they wanted to do more shows. Near as I can figure, we thought, well, we've got this 2-part thing with this cast under control. We know how to make good ones. Let's blow it up and do something completely different.
Welcome to the Justice League.
When we started Justice League Unlimited, we came to the conclusion that it would have to be an entirely different kind of organization for the Justice League. So they've got a new satellite, much bigger. We've brought in all these additional heroes because they need more troops. And we have John Jones being essentially a watch sergeant, a desk sergeant at a police station. So he's the one who coordinates all the different missions of the Justice League.
We felt that we kind of needed somebody to be up on the Watchtower, keeping an eye on things and assigning missions, and making sure that that fire in Indochina gets put out at the same time that somebody's there to take care of that train wreck in France.
Hawk and Dove, Star and Stripe, Shining Knight, Fire and Ice, Dr. Light.
Bruce came up with the idea. He says, we're going to have all these heroes, and they're all going to be on a team, and they're going to break up and go on missions. And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, it sounds pretty cool.
Why don't we open up the ranks of the Justice League to include basically every hero in the DC universe that they'll let us play with?
So it just seemed a natural progression to include more superheroes.
Since there are so many of us, we have a chance to do more than just put out fires, both literal and figurative.
Once everybody signed off on the new format, we sat down and said, okay, now which heroes do we actually want to use? First of all, we literally went through the DC who's who, and we literally made like this huge laundry list of characters that we submitted to DC and said, can we use these characters in the show?
DC bent over backwards. They let us use characters that we really wanted to use, and they didn't want us to, and they really rarely said no to us. I mean, they really let us go nuts on their guys, and it was pretty cool.
We're all equal in at least one way. Each of us is willing to make the sacrifices a hero needs to make, even the ultimate one.
One of the ideas that we toyed with was redesigning all the characters, and as it turned out, you don't tug on Superman's cape.
We're staying very true to what these designs originally were.
Whichever incarnation the hero was in when you first read the comic, that's the archetype.
We never heard back from you.
Been kind of busy. Someone's got to keep the streets safe while you and your pals are out there zipping around the galaxy.
During our first 2 seasons, a lot of the fan comments revolved around Green Arrow, because Green Arrow was essentially an 8th member of the Justice League in the comics originally. So we were all happy to use him.
And then characters like the Question. He's pretty much the classic Steve Ditko Question back from the Charlton days. The minute we recorded that show, the first episode with the Question, we literally walked out of that recording going, I just want to make the show all about the Question. From this point on, it's like, forget about Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. It's like, it should just be all about the Question.
What was that about? What do you think? We're asking questions someone doesn't want answered.
Oh, learn a new tune already.
The bad side of having all these characters is there are always characters in the back of your childhood that you've always wanted to play with, and you don't always get a chance to do those shows.
It turns out that we all have our different favorite heroes, and we passed that list around to the producers and the writers and the freelance writers, and said, okay, who do you want to use? And we got some very odd choices that came in.
Wannabeast, how you doing?
My legs are fine, as is the rest of me. Up here...
Whoa, she's got the fire of the cheetah in her.
So we just picked the ones we liked the best, the ones who we knew had more of a backstory.
There are a lot of really cool characters that we wouldn't have had time to work into the old format that we get to see animated, for the first time.
I think half the joy of watching the show is being able to pause it and look who's way in the background of that shot and say, look at that, that's Booster Gold hanging out with Gypsy back there.
Theoretically, John has some plan in mind when he teams up this one with that one, and their powers will complement each other, although often he does it for psychological purposes, so that one will teach another a lesson.
Sometimes there's clashes, sometimes there's fun, personality-wise, it's just fun to watch that go down, and that's where the drama is.
Why don't you take the stick out, Corporal?
Captain.
You've got Captain Atom, who's very military and does things by the book on one side, and you've got Supergirl, who's impulsive on the other side, and it allows you to explore a lot of the internal conflict externally.
When we decide which members of the 40 will go off on an adventure, it's a little bit like cooking. If you don't know too much about cooking and you'd like to do it, what ingredients would go well together, and you kind of guess.
It's time to try a new path.
And what path is that?
Peace.
Not really my thing.
The casting process goes like this. Whenever we have a script come in, we'll sit down with Andrea Romano, who's our vocal and casting director, and we'll just start brainstorming ideas for the characters. Ultimately, we just try to cast who we think would be appropriate for the part.
No universe, however large, however small, is denied to me.
Leaving the Justice League was difficult for her. I provided her sanctuary, a place to meditate on her life and future.
Then we're looking at the big nightmare of nanotechnology. A machine that could build clones of itself out of atoms of anything.
They nail these characters. They understand them inside and out. They really, really do. And Andrea's really great at directing, and Bruce really knows exactly what he wants.
We're gonna use every bit of power we have left in our rings. Take one last shot at the android.
A blast like that could destroy half the planet.
Half a planet's better than none.
During the first 2 seasons, we stuck to dramas and a format that we didn't really want to violate too much. Big villains, big fights. And after 2 seasons of that, some of the writers just said, let's have a little fun now.
So some of the stories are quieter and some of the stories are simpler. And there's still some that are still quite epic. We're still managing to squeeze a whole lot of action into, a little 20-minute story. But it's definitely a much more open framework to generate story ideas.
The new format made it a lot easier to do more comedic episodes, which we kind of shied away from in the first 2 seasons of Justice League.
This was a lot of fun to us because it kind of really opened up the doors to the story possibilities of, featuring different characters, and we could do different kinds of stories. We had a lot of fun with that.
He's just a baby. That's all he needed.
Oh man, that ain't all he needs.
You can tell a comedy story. You can tell, kid stuff. It's a lighthearted story. I mean, it's got some kind of heavy, undertones, but you're able to tell these fun stories.
I like the idea of being able to do comedy. I mean, this little piggy it's just outrageous.
We'd never planned on having 3 comedies in the first season of Justice League. It just kind of happened that way.
Light 'em up!
In general, the people around here don't have to force themselves to be creative. They have to keep a lid on. And that lid was raised real high on JLU.
I really liked the show. I thought it was funny. I thought it was exciting.
All these characters, this new Watchtower, everything's hitting you so hard, so fast.
It's just a pageant of heroes. And to me, that was a lot of fun to see all of them.
It really doesn't get any better than that. That's just, that was a dream.
It's no holds barred at this point. All the gloves are off. You've got every single character you've ever wanted to see animated, you're now able to see.
Might get to, feed my inner geek fix and get to see some of these heroes that I've liked for, basically all my life. I get to see them animated and in action.
It's time we talked.
Hi, I'm Mark Hamill, and for a comic book fan like me, it's a real treat to be able to talk with three of the most important people behind Justice League Unlimited. Why don't you introduce yourself, guys, and tell us what you do?
I'm Dwayne McDuffie, producer.
I'm Bruce Timm, producer.
James Tucker, producer.
Okay, and we're talking about an 8-episode arc in a 13-episode season, basically.
Basically, yeah.
And what are the problems of writing an arc that's that inclusive? I mean, do you also want it to stand alone in a way, or make it an out-and-out cliffhanger?
Ideally, you want to have the episodes be both. That you could just turn the show on any day and go, be able to watch that episode and be, satisfied and not feel that it was confusing because you didn't know what came before and what came after. But at the same time, it does kind of connect in an overall broader arc. So it was tricky.
One thing that I thought was intriguing is there are clues, or at least foreshadowing, of story elements in this arc that go all the way back to like Brave New World and some of the episodes on Superman. Now, is that just by accident, or did you go back?
It was all luck.
It was luck. Did you go back over old episodes and say, if we took a nugget here and here, we could do this?
Yeah.
If the Justice League ever went rogue, what do you think would be the result?
That's moot.
Humor me. In every single scenario, you beat us. Badly. But that was before Cadmus.
Cadmus was from the comic books, or was it an original idea?
It was from the comics, yeah.
How is it different, and how did you adapt it for the animated show?
It's quite a bit different. I mean, the Cadmus thing in the comics was it wasn't quite as political. It was much more of a mad scientist think tank, and we kind of connected it to this whole big, shadowy government conspiracy thing.
Right.
And when we plotted the very first episode in that arc, it was actually Fearful Symmetry. When we were talking about doing it, we realized that we had done a lot of different kind of shadowy government conspiracy episodes from previous series, but especially in Superman, and we went, hey, you know what, we can, instead of those all being separate conspiracies, they could all be part of the same conspiracy. Right. So it kind of like expanded the scope of our show beyond just Justice League Unlimited. It expanded both backward to Superman and Batman, and even forward to the Batman Beyond show. So it was kind of just blind luck, really.
It was like all the pieces were there right in front of us, and we were like, yeah, remember when we did that, and remember that character did that, and it was like, oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, and then we could put the Zeta robots in there.
This actually works, yeah,
totally.
Right.
It was
all connected.
Did you know how long it was going to be? I mean, did you have a target of X amount of episodes, or you just wanted to, you did?
Well, we
knew we wanted to do a big arc, right?
Yeah.
I can shut down Cadmus without killing Luthor.
Carry on, then. If you're wrong, it's not like it's the end of the world, right?
It's much deeper than a child's cartoon should be, because you're asking, what is the nature of a superhero? Right. Do we need superheroes? Why are there superheroes? And one thing that's interesting is you have Cadmus. I mean, the way I played the Joker, too, I didn't play him as a villain. He was just an unappreciated genius.
Right.
It's your problem if you don't get me. And Cadmus, I love the fact that Cadmus, they're not twirling their mustaches.
Right.
They really think what they're doing is good.
Yeah, well, that was a conscious choice.
Well, I was going to say, they started out pretty much evil. In the first couple episodes, they're definitely, not on the up and up. But then in the Doomsday Sanction episode, when Batman accosts Amanda Waller in her bathroom, which I think is a neat touch, and he just starts going at her and saying, I don't know what you guys are up to, and it's like, if you harm the American people, we're going to come down on you. And she says, if we're a threat to the American people, and she lays out, boom, boom, boom. Right. This is what we're doing. This is what you guys are capable of. This is what you did in another dimension. And Batman's kind of like, darn, she's kind of got me.
She is kind of
and it's
right.
like, she's making these really valid points. So it's like from that point on, it's like it's not just all black and white anymore. There's a big, gray area. And that whole episode, it's all kind of set up that way to show that the Justice League and the whole Cadmus group are kind of two sides of the same coin.
You're making a statement that they're pretty much the same kind of entities.
What were you thinking? You're gonna kill Superman and everyone else on the island.
We have to sanction Doomsday. We were going to get to Superman somewhere down the line, and we've been trying to stop drug traffic from San Vaquero for years. The way I see it, 3 birds, 1 stone.
Call it off.
The actors that you're able to attract, Carl Lumley and
CCH Pounder,
Robert Foxworth. I mean, these are actors that you'd kill to work with in any medium, and it's fun to see these dignified, really gifted actors
playing comic book characters. Yeah,
comic book characters. Cool. I know I get a real delight out of that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of these guys are so good. They have no clue. They don't have the background we have in the comic books, but they have what's on the printed page, and they're good actors.
I was going to say the best example of that is CCH Pounder. She'd come in, and we had sent her the script beforehand, and clearly hasn't read it. And she'll come in. She'd already played Amanda Waller like in like maybe 5 or 6 episodes. She'd come in and she'd go, "Okay, so who am I playing again?" We'd say, "You're playing Amanda Waller." "Okay, I vaguely remember that character." It's like, okay.
Who is she again?
Yeah, and then we would just roughly tell her what the scene was about. She'd go, "Okay, I think I got it." And she'd just give us basically a cold reading right off the page without any preparation whatsoever, and it would just be amazing. And it's like, wow, she's not even trying hard, and she's giving us this great stuff. So it was like, yeah, she was
And it's a multifaceted character, because you, at various times, hate this woman.
Absolutely.
Then you really admire her, and then especially it's poignant at the end to see her in epilogue. And she's really, like you say, I mean, it's a really awesome and multi-layered performance, no question about that.
And she got there without half trying. It was just like, wow.
So I don't know, any other actor anecdotes come to mind? Who did you meet that you never thought you'd meet doing this series?
On this series?
I was pretty stoked when we got J.K. in for the first time, because I was such a fan of him for the long time.
Too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, please, J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
Jameson, and who did he play in this?
He played General Eiling. And again, it wasn't like a real super meaty part or anything. It just, his name came up while we were brainstorming ideas for casting. I said, "Oh yeah, he'd be great." And we didn't think he'd ever do it, but he's like, "Oh, sure, I'm not doing anything that day. I'll come in and do it." And he's just, again, just a total pro and totally got it.
It's a bloomin' fortress crawling with superheroes. Even if we do get in, what chance do we have? We may as well be storming Heaven's Gate itself.
Let's talk about Task Force X. One of my favorite episodes. Certainly one of the hardest to pronounce.
Yeah, definitely.
How does that come about? Do you say, I want to do a caper movie kind of feel?
It started off literally mechanically. We realized that at that point in the arc, that every time Cadmus had gone up against the Justice League had cleaned their clock. We said, you know what? If Cadmus is going to be a credible threat, they're going to need to win one.
Right.
And so then we started just roughly throwing some ideas around, and we realized, hey, this would be a really good way to show the Cadmus point of view of the heroes. And then we started realizing, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of like an old caper movie. It's that whole genre where, you have a group of misfits, they have a job to do,
each one.
And the first half of the movie is the plotting of it, the planning, and that can be interesting. And then the second half is, them executing the plot, and then it goes wrong. And we realized as we were plotting it, you know what? We really need to show this episode completely from the point of view of the bad guys. So they have to be, oh my God, we're up here in the watchtower.
That was the best first to second draft improvement, I think, in my entire time on the show.
How so?
First draft was sort of third person, normal, omniscient. You're following everything around. When we switched to the point of view of the villains, it not only worked really well for the show, but it worked really well for the arc. It was a sort of a situation where we're in these characters' heads. They're going to space, to the scariest place in the world, and gods walk around in there, and they just have to go in there and steal their stuff and get out. And anybody in there is so powerful that they could kill all of them.
Yeah.
The Task Force X is a good example of something that I think stands alone, but then it's an important component to the overall.
Well, if you look at it, it worked really well at first. We had standalone episodes that had themes that ran through the whole season.
Right.
And it worked really, really well. But the closer we got to the end of the season, we just painted ourselves into a corner.
Yeah.
And seriously, the last 4 episodes are one episode.
It's one long episode,
right.
yeah.
From Flashpoint on, is it? Or Question of
Authority.
Yeah.
We just didn't say to be continued and hope nobody noticed.
Yeah.
I'm Captain Marvel, sir, and it is an honor. You're my biggest fan.
Excuse me?
I mean, I'm your biggest fan. Sorry, sir, it's a little overwhelming meeting you.
I wanted to do a Captain Marvel episode all the way back to, like, Superman. And
what was the resistance to that?
It wasn't necessarily there was any resistance. It's just that we could never really quite come up with the story that was quite right. And when we started plotting that episode, we went through about 5 or 6 different scenarios that all were just really dumb. It's like, And I was fine with that. I was like, you know what? I don't care if the reason is really dumb. I just want to see him fight. And but James was the one who kept, no, that's too dumb. You can't. It's just too obvious. You can't just do Marvel team up. They can't just meet and have a disagreement and fight. It had
What's
to be
your concept with Captain Marvel? Does he still have a 10-year-old brain? Is he still Billy Batson?
In our show.
Yeah. I mean, the way I wanted to play him was he's still a kid.
Yeah, it's like Big.
Yeah, very much like Big.
I kind of like that approach.
Well, the arc helped sell that too, because we needed something to kind of show us where Superman had moved to, because Superman generally was in the Boy Scout role.
Right.
That whole season, Luthor messing with him has sort of showed the chinks in his armor. And to put a character in who was very much like him physically, but was a lot more pure, really gave us a chance to show how much Superman had moved.
Did you really think you could take me down all by yourself?
Actually, yeah. But on the off chance I might have been wrong.
Ta-da!
It's over, Lex.
Panic in the Sky, by the way. That's the title of a Superman episode from the George Reeves version.
Oh, there's two jokes in that. There's a Superman episode. Years later, DC did a crossover called Panic in the Sky, where the bad guy was Brainiac. So we actually waved at you and said, the bad guy's Brainiac if you're paying attention.
Oh.
That's right.
Hey, see, you guys brought a new
think about this stuff way too hard.
To the geek-a-thon. But I know. But listen, I'm one of those geeks that really got thrilled the first time I saw Luthor team up with Joker. Now you have Luthor team up with Brainiac and bring like a new definition to
togetherness. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that scene alone, I mean, again, a great surprise. I had no idea, although you foreshadowed, because Lex is using super strength basically to trash Question.
Yeah.
Did you worry about how far to go? Because I'm trying to remember now. I thought, well, that's unusual because he's not known as.
Yeah.
And
he hits him across the room and breaks the desk.
Exactly, that kind of stuff.
And he also reacts to it himself.
Oh yeah, he's kind of going, wow.
Like he looks at his hands,
cool.
kind of like, what did I just,
Yeah, that's my favorite scene in that whole show. Is that whole confrontation between the Question and Luthor. I mean, you've never seen a cartoon where one of your heroes is attempting to murder the villain in cold blood.
Right. And he's insane.
He's not insane. He's being very rational. I mean, he's doing it for a good cause. It's not justifiable homicide, but he is doing it for the good of the world, so he thinks.
Welcome, Justice League. You're just in time for the end of the world.
One of the things I want to ask is, you talked a little bit, Dwayne, about painting yourself into a corner as the end of the season.
Right, yeah.
So that answers some of my questions in that you become committed to, the tasks at hand. You have deadlines. You got to get this done, this done, this done. So you're really locked in early on without fully mapping out what happens at the end.
We had a vague idea.
Yeah, we kind of knew what the big fight was at the end, although we ended up changing it when we got to it.
Totally.
But you sort of have the big elements, like around episode 4, this is going to happen. And
for
around
the longest time, we thought the big thing was going to be Luthor putting his brain into Amazo.
Yeah. Amazo, that's right.
That was the thing. And then it was like, at some point, it was like, no, that can't be the thing. That's not. It was suddenly it wasn't a part of the whole idea of the. So then the Brainiac thing came.
Yeah, it sort of came off.
It
came off theme. It was. We have the plot set up, but as we're developing individual stories, themes reveal themselves.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden,
you have to be flexible enough to go with what it suggests.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had no idea that Question and Huntress were going to play such an integral part of the Cadmus arc.
Right.
I mean, when we introduced them together as a couple in Double Date, that was pretty much going to be the end of Huntress at that point. But then but they had such good chemistry together. We realized that we could fold them into the Cadmus arc. It made his situation in the Cadmus arc that much more poignant to have somebody to play off against and to have somebody who cares for him besides just the audience caring for him.
Right.
And so things like that, it's a lot of it's just serendipity, a lot of it's blind luck, a lot of it's realizing that you have a really good piece there that you can use in a certain way. At one point, we knew the Question was going to be the one who kind of unraveled the whole Justice Lords thing. But at one point, we were talking about him teaming up with Lois Lane, of all people, during that whole investigation. And then we realized that wasn't even all that important.
There was a scene where he goes to see her.
He goes to,
yeah. It was much more interesting to have that happen, with.
And this is obviously
with
after you had considered having Batman be the one who steals the Cadmus.
Well, at one point we had talked about of Batman actually switching sides.
Yeah, he was going to split off and be his own team and gather up some loose heroes we had.
Yeah, but we realized that was a dead end. We realized that there was no way you could have him do that without making either himself look like a jerk or making the Justice League look like jerks. It's like it would have been a great stunt to pull off to actually have him team up with Cadmus. But we realized there was no way out of it. So we had to leave ourselves a back door. I mean, arguably, even the last episode, Divided We Fall, is a bit of a cheat because we were setting up this whole Justice League versus the government thing, and then we introduced this third villain, the classic Architects of Fear scenario.
That's true, but I've heard people say that we never pay that off, but we do.
We do
the
pay
episode
it off.
Before
Absolutely.
The government attacks the Justice League and they fight.
I know.
Seeing, I don't know, I think seeing Luthor become president and having the Justice League attack the president is just wrong.
It is wrong, I agree. We would never do that. Absolutely.
And we
we were teasing it. We were teasing up to it. We realized we couldn't actually do that, so we needed to take a left-hand curve at that point. And again, I can argue with myself. I would argue that if the whole question throughout the entire Cadmus arc is, is it a good thing to have superheroes, these all-powerful superheroes, kind of lording it over everybody and being there? The easy answer is, of course, because they live in a world where you have supervillains, where you have crazed cyborgs who are trying to destroy Earth and digitize it and then destroy it. Yes, obviously it's a good thing to have the group of superheroes to counteract them. Obviously, it's not a real-world question. If the superheroes actually existed in the real world, then it would be a completely different question. But so we got to raise the question and answer it and play around with it and say, and again, it's kind of political. It kind of shows that there's not always a right and a wrong, or a Republican and a Democrat, or a communist.
There's ambiguities in life too.
Yeah.
I've been wondering when you were going to show up. Terry McGinnis. Or do you prefer being called Batman?
Is this meant in any way to wrap anything up? I mean, you get the feeling, even with Epilogue, you're putting a little coda on the entire Terry McGinnis thing with the marriage at the end. I want to ask you a question. Are you doing the same thing with Justice League, or you're able to go back and do anything you want, but there was a feeling
when Epilogue was, we had no idea that we were going to get picked up for another season at that point. We thought for sure that was going to be our last episode, so that was definitely our effort to wrap everything up and put a nice little ribbon on it.
Right. There's so many references that I got. I'm thinking there must be 10 times more, and then I'm not getting. The origin of Terry McGinnis, he's coming out of a movie version of The Grey Ghost that Adam West played in the original
Batman show. Yeah, we deliberately, we had kind of avoided doing in-jokes and continuity implants in the first couple seasons of Justice League.
I love them.
We wanted the show to stand on its own. We kind of didn't want it to be, necessarily, a continuation of Batman or Superman or whatever. And then after a while, we said, you know what, it's kind of fun to do that stuff. And we started getting more and more into it. And thinking that Epilogue was going to be our last episode, we totally jammed as many in-jokes and references and callbacks as we could in there. I mean, that's why we put the Phantasm in there. It's like she doesn't really serve any good purpose there. We just needed an assassin, to be the one.
But that's so much more exciting when you make a Phantasm. And Dwayne, any things that you jammed in there?
Not that particular episode, because I sort of saw that as, in a way, sort of the cap to everything from the first Batman through Superman through Justice League, pushing it forward and incorporating and capping not only Batman Beyond, but the whole idea of all these DC characters in this universe. So I was really, really concentrating on hitting all those, and there was actually a lot of story in that. There was a lot we had to do.
Did you lose plot points and you said, I hate to lose this, but we have to, just because of time?
Not from time. You were saying there was too many plot points.
Yeah.
He said this will never work.
It's like we'll never get all this done. This is not going to happen. I remember we had what I thought was a really good draft, and there wasn't much Justice League in it. And Bruce says, well, I want to do this Justice League scene. And it's like, we don't have room for a Justice League scene. He's like, well, let me tell you the scene. And it's this really lovely scene where Ace dies and Batman comforts her.
James and I came up with that bit, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we got room for that. And it made the show. It really, like, it focused a lot of connecting it. I really like that scene.
Now, did you feel once you got the pickup for 13 after this, you all assumed this is the end?
Yes.
We're just going to blow it all out and do everything that we ever dreamed of with this series. Then you find out you got picked up for 13. Did you do the classic? No!
Oh, totally.
Yeah, that wasn't the first time either.
No. Oh no, that was the second time. We did.
At the end of Justice League, we thought we were done. Right. So it's like, okay,
now what are
we're gonna blow up the Watchtower, and then we're gonna
kick Hawkgirl out.
Kick Hawkgirl off the team, and then you want more?
Yeah. So what do we do? Okay, well, we'll change the whole show. All new Watchtower and 52 heroes and half-hour episodes.
That's great because you could have never done the Cadmus arc with the old.
That's
the old show,
situation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The old with the classic
seven. Worked.
Sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
You remember what we did yesterday? We saved the world again. You don't think that has any value? Well, think again, pal. The world needs the Justice League, and the Justice League needs you, Superman.
You must have been spoiled on this particular season because I pretty much followed what you've done from the original Batman through Superman, through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of diversity and the elements of humor and drama and comedy and thought-provoking themes, I don't know how you'd ever top this Cadmus project.
Well, we were pretty happy with it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but looking back on all of the shows that we've done, I mean, I was pretty proud of it. It seemed like consistently the whole Cadmus arc was like one of the most sustained, consistently well done things that I think I've ever done in my career.
I think those 2 seasons of JLU were just the tightest stories I think we ever worked on. I mean, and the ones we felt that we had the most control over too. Yeah, I'm very proud of working on that series.
And it was like definitely going out on a high note.
Yeah, ringing that bell.
Yeah.
Yep. And then they asked for 13 more.
Isn't that always the way? There's always more to come. There's new deadlines to meet. Well, listen, I want to thank James and Dwayne and Bruce for putting up with a comic book geek like myself, and I had a good time. I hope you guys did too. Thanks a lot. Now let's talk trash.
Yeah.
Who did you really hate the most, besides me?
I'm not interested in working with you or anyone else.
I think you'll change your mind once you've seen what I have to offer.
So when we finished up the previous season with the whole big Cadmus arc, which was like our big dark, quote unquote, adult political, the whole thing. And it was one of our most successful seasons of any show we'd ever done. And then when we got picked up for 13 more, it was kind of like, well, what do we do next? And I think all of us decided we just didn't want to do, something like Cadmus again. And we, as great as it was really kind of heavy, and we just wanted to do a complete 180 away from that. And then Dwayne mentioned that we should do the Legion of Doom, and I said, we've done the Secret Society, we've done the Injustice Gang, and he said no. Straight up Legion of Doom with the big Darth Vader head in the swamp and the whole thing, and I was like, okay, that's quite different than the Cadmus thing. At least we'll be able to know who the bad guys are in this one.
It's lighter. It's good guys and bad guys. It's a chance to. I think what really sold me was the idea of repeating the shot at the beginning of Justice League Unlimited with all the heroes and doing the same thing with the villains. I don't remember who came up with that, but as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, we absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about space at one point too, taking them out into space, and we sort of used that
a little bit, toward the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole season turned out to be more about the Legion of Doom, really, than about our heroes, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, the previous season was about Superman, and this season ended up being about Luthor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and fortunately, Clancy's just such a great actor, and our version of Luthor is, I think, an interesting character in his own right, and he's multifaceted. We've done all these different versions of Luthor over the years, but he's definitely an interesting enough character that he could carry that kind of, attention, as the main character. And he goes through a lot in this season too. I mean, first he's like reluctant, and then,
Well, first he's kind of insane because he thinks...
First he's insane, and he's talking to Brainiac, who's not really there, and
then once he tasers Grad,
right?
Yeah,
feels much better about himself.
Well, I think the whole idea of this episode started just because we had, it dawned on me one day that we had Michael Rosenbaum, who plays Lex Luthor on Smallville, in the same series with a different Lex Luthor, and I thought, well, we got to do an episode someday where they switch brains so that Michael can actually be playing our Lex Luthor. And, that was the whole reason why we did this episode, and then it turns out that Clancy is the one who kind of steals this episode because Matt came up with all these great gags for when he's got Flash's brain inside Lex's body, and it's pure comic gold. The recording session was really fun too because we actually had Michael and Clancy in the room at the same time, and just to make the performances authentic, we had Michael would say, Flash dialogue just the way he would normally say it, and then Clancy would repeat it repeating Michael's inflections. And Michael was messing with Clancy because he would be given the most outrageous line readings, and Clancy would just he would just do it exactly the way Michael said it. And it was really a hoot. It was really fun to watch. But Clancy has unsuspected gifts as a comedian. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And that system of saying the lines back and forth, it was the Dead Man episode that Andreas started doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And
it worked great.
It's kind of brilliant.
It's kind of a cheat, but, whatever.
This is not time to show weakness. The wolf is at the door.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Polaris is this far from open revolt.
Now, Tala is a character that I don't think we ever really planned to give her as much screen time as we ultimately did.
No, not at all.
In the first couple episodes that we did it, or we had the character in it, Juliet would just come up with, again, these really off-the-wall line readings for the character with her moose and squirrel accent, and she just made us laugh so hard. She would come up with really cool ad-libs and stuff. And
yeah, she's the only person I ever want to ad-lib because I always get mad when actors ad-lib. Right, she would ad-lib it and it'd be 10 times funnier.
Absolutely. And so we just loved what she did with the character. And so when we were plotting out this arc, the whole Legion of Doom arc, she just, it felt natural to give her, this position in the storyline. First as Grodd's girlfriend, which is really weird in itself, and then, once Luthor takes over, becomes his girlfriend.
Well, Grodd's got, issues anyway.
Well, totally. Yeah, he's he likes the human women. But this is of course one of everybody's favorite scenes.
This is also Michael Rosenbaum doing Polaris, isn't it?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had to double up a lot on this show, I think, as far as voices go.
Yeah, talking to himself.
You gonna wash your hands?
This is a great gag.
No. Because I'm evil. Yeah. Good gag. Yeah, we ended up not having quite as much fun with Luthor being in Flash's body. But, it's cool, but it's, it's more serious because, it's we always make this joke that it's if Flash were, half as smart as a normal human being, he would be the most powerful superhero on Earth. And so, yeah, sure, the minute we put Luthor in his body, it's wow, if you put a super genius inside Flash's body, it's he's going to figure out how to do all these deadly things with the superpowers. So, with the super speed. But
we actually did a lot of dialogue covering why our Flash doesn't do that stuff all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Trying to cover our tracks there. Yeah, why doesn't Flash vibrate through walls and all that other stuff?
Because the show would be over. Because molecularly...
Right.
That's right. people complain a lot about our CGI vehicles and stuff, but I like the CGI javelin.
Yes,
I think it looks
particularly
really
good
cool.
in this episode.
It really does look nice.
I can counter this.
And that's Powers Booth playing Red Tornado. A lot of people are going, who played Red Tornado? And it's like, yeah, we put such a heavy voice filter on him that it could really be anybody. And we kind of had to because Powers' voice is so distinctive that we pretty much had to like put that major robotic futz on him so that you couldn't tell it was Powers.
He sounds like he's been sucking on helium though.
Yeah, it's a little high pitched, but we had to because again, at the lower pitch, even with the robot filter on him, he still sounded like Powers.
No, I remember at the mix we were going up and down and up and down, and it just kept sounding like Powers Booth.
Yeah.
Plan. Question the plan at your peril. Any questions?
Now, who is that guy? That guy in the black and
That's
yellow.
not Angleman, is it? See, James.
Is that Angleman?
Okay.
That's Angleman.
Yeah, see, James is the only one who knows who all these characters are.
Because I got to design all of them. So I have the
you
pleasure.
knew who they were before.
This is probably my favorite gag in the show. And this is one we didn't discuss when we were plotting out the show. That just showed up. Matt just put that in the script one day, and we just went, "Oh my God, that is so funny." Am you Bizarro's mommy?
Well,
so funny.
Yeah, a good deal of this is Dwayne's outline, and it's only fair to say that some of the best lines in here I didn't write.
Well,
but Bizarro's mommy is me.
This morning.
Yeah, some of those villains in the background, I don't have any idea who they are. Is it Shark Man?
Yep.
Why
That's not really his name. Is it Shark Man? Or
The Shark.
The Shark.
The Shark? Oh, okay.
That's completely different.
Yeah, that's not dumb at all.
You just wonder why some of these guys didn't get bigger parts,
Yeah. When it came time to decide who the villains were in the Legion of Doom, Bruce and the guys totally left it up to me. So I just started going through my comic books and just picking out who I liked, who I thought would never ever be in animation ever again.
You succeeded.
And I picked the most obscure villains I could, actually. So.
Like deliberately? I mean, you picked other ones too, like Dr. Polaris and people like that who are not all that obscure. They're kind of.
There's a good mix of powers too. I mean.
Yeah. Obscure to non-geeks. That's what I meant.
True.
That's not restful.
Lex, you're having.
I have always wanted to do a variation of this gag. I was so happy.
Oh, really? This? I don't have any idea who it is.
Yeah, villains always want to unmask superheroes like they know everybody in the city.
Right.
Yeah.
I have no idea who this is.
You and I are the reincarnation of lovers who died here thousands of years ago. My real name is Qatar Hall. But you can call me Hawkman.
When we did the Star-Crossed episode, initially the Rotalic character was supposed to be Qatar Hall. He was supposed to be Hawkman, and DC Comics didn't want us to turn Hawkman into a villain, which we would have had to have done in that show, and they were absolutely right. And for the longest time, we were like, fine with that. It was just kind of like, no, that story worked, and that is the DC animated universe version of Hawkman, for want of a better term. And then when we were plotting out this season, I think we were just throwing ideas around. I said, well, what if we brought in the real Hawkman?
Well, you remember what happened. Initially, we were going to do a story with the original 7 from the comics that we had never done.
Right.
And
with Hal Jordan and Barry Allen and everything.
And then sort of once we couldn't really get that working right, you were like, well, we should still do Hawkman. And I think let's just figure out how to bring him back.
Well, and I think what gave us the hook was recently in the comics, Jeff Johns and several other writers had created this new version of Hawkman that tried to consolidate all the different versions of Hawkman, because he's got a really tangled comic book history. And the new take on Hawkman is that all of those things are real, and that he was an Egyptian, he was a reincarnated Egyptian priest, and he was a Thanagarian, policeman, and all these things, and they tried to make that all work together.
I took a lot of stuff out of Jeff's version of the.
The thing that we really liked was the reincarnated angle, and the fact that he meets this new Hawk girl in real life, and she doesn't really buy it. She just thinks he's just this weird guy who's got like these delusions and stuff. We thought that's a good hook. That would totally work for us. And we played up that whole angle of him, being literally a stalker, and
which was creepy.
It was creepy, but he's a likable character. We kind of got away with it because it's creepy only if you think about it, but you don't really get like a skeevy vibe off of the character himself when he's being that way.
And he redeems himself at the end.
And he totally redeems himself, and he seems genuine in his love for her. It's not like he's just like got like a creepy fixation on her. He seems like well, because they really are reincarnated lovers. I think his love is genuine. One of the interesting things about this episode is that we had, unusually for us, we actually had this whole episode pretty much plotted out when we did the first part of this episode, which was way back at the beginning of the season. We knew the whole twist on who Shadow Thief was.
If you watch that carefully, you in the origin, you see him being created.
Yep. And we're dropping real subtle little hints as to who he is in that episode. And we knew that we were going to do this whole flashback to ancient Egypt and everything, so it was like we were actually, for once, we were very well prepared. Normally we're just making the stuff up as we go along, but this one we actually had kind of figured out. The one thing that did kind of trip us up is the whole bit with Vixen and John. Is initially she was just supposed to be a plot complication because we knew eventually we're going to get GL and Hawkgirl back together again, and we created Vixen to be just a roadblock, just to be somebody to make that process clumsier and more awkward and not so easy. But the thing is, we ended up liking the character so much.
Well, you made a huge mistake. You cast Gina Torres, who I adore.
Yeah, I know.
She's got to come back, right?
Exactly. Yeah, well, we wrote the part well, and James came up with a really good design for it. And like you said, Gina Torres just came in, and we were just all like, oh. And so, at that point, she couldn't just be the rebound girl anymore. It's like, we had to make Jon Stewart fall in love with her as much as we did.
And it upped the stakes, and it changed the story.
It
ultimately.
did. It made it much more difficult than we expected it to, and we kind of wrote ourselves into a corner because it left us with no way for John to get out of that situation with any kind of dignity or without coming off as a jerk to somebody.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering about when we were getting the scripts. I was like, how is he going to get himself out of this situation, man?
I think we did the best we could considering what we had to work with. I mean, because this was the episode where we made the decision, because we'd done a bunch of episodes where he was kind of dissing her, where he was like, it was clear that he still had feelings for Shayera, and he was like kind of like not giving his present girlfriend the full respect that she needed. And it was when we wrote this episode, we said, you know what, we need to make it clear that he really does have feelings for her. That's why we wrote in that scene where they're having breakfast and they're very, very casual, and it's like they're very comfortable with each other. And I honestly think he really does love Vixen, and I think he means what he says at the end. He's not just saying it to be stubborn. I think he really wants to stay with her for a while.
Well, originally we had talked about the way to get out of it was to have Vixen preemptively dump him, but then that didn't feel right.
No, that felt like a cop-out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I still remember you pushing really hard on this, James. This was like a really important part of the story.
Yeah, I think we got in a big argument about that,
Absolutely.
actually.
Yeah.
I was like, he can't dump Vixen.
I know.
And he'd be on me till I agreed.
No, and I think he's absolutely right. Well, so a lot of the fans, of course, were left kind of hanging because they were really disappointed that GL and Shayera didn't end up in a big clinch. We know for a fact that GL and Hawkgirl will get together again sometime in the future because we already saw they create Warhawk. Yeah, we know that that's going to happen. So the way I see it is that GL and Vixen are going to be together for a number of years, probably. Maybe they even get married, but either she dies or they get divorced or whatever, and then he eventually will get back together with Shayera. I always think of Shayera and John kind of like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, or Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner. It's like they're together, then they break up, and then they meet later in life and get married, and whatever. So, and I think this whole flashback kind of reinforces that too, the fact that they're kind of she and John are kind of eternal lovers in a weird kind of way. And this is one thing I think is interesting too, is when you watch this flashback bit, if you think about this, John and Shayera's love changed the course of human history.
That's true.
It's because the Thanagarians were there; they were going to rule us. Maybe their advanced science would have made the human race advance faster than it ultimately did. But because John and Shayera fell in love back together, back in the ancient past, You know, they brought down the Thanagarian, the early Thanagarian Empire here on Earth. So it's like, that's kind of cool.
I mean, I could have had wings.
You could have had wings. Yeah. Could have had golden, surgically implanted wings.
This flashback was the most fun scene for me to work on that whole season. It was just a riot.
It was a lot of fun.
This was something I had to keep explaining to my friends. Like, it's the idea that they're eternal lovers. It's not actually Green Lantern.
Right.
It's insinuated.
Yeah. Well, it's their souls, maybe.
Yes.
I remember when we first got this episode back from overseas, we were really disappointed in it because we had such high expectations for it, and we thought, the animation's not very good, and this and that, but it cleaned up nice. Right. I mean, we did quite a few retakes on it because there was some weird off-model animation in it, but it came together really nicely in the end.
The one thing that did confuse me, though, was that they refused for some reason to do a bottom-lit sun there. And I remember we called specifically for this sun to be bottom-lit. It's like a painted element, which is just completely technical, but...
Interesting.
Save some for me.
This really plays.
It does. And of course, we did a little reprise of their staging from Wild Cards.
Yes.
And the
Even
real
the music,
life.
too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You didn't realize that?
No.
Oh yeah, no, it's staged exactly the same.
Yeah.
Totally it. I think we even initially used the boards from the end of that.
Put different costumes on
Yeah,
it?
just pasted them down. There it is.
Oh, that's sweet.
She's beautiful.
It's the green eyes.
Yeah, thank God for those green eyes. And that's where it's a little different. Evil Boris Karloff guy hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
It can't be true.
And this is James Remar doing... No, yes.
Yeah, James Remar is...
That's right.
The ancient Qatar.
Because we cast...
Hector.
Yeah, to reflect Starcrossed. He plays a similar character in that.
Yeah, that's another little fake out.
Yeah, because the fake out is that he is supposed to be Shadow Thief.
Well, it's actually a double fake out, because anybody who catches that it's Hector Elizondo might be thinking, he's a reincarnation of Krager from Starcrossed.
So he wants revenge. He's got to be right.
And then it turns out he's just a complete red herring because he's not the Shadow Thief at all. And that's a testament to James Remar's acting skill that people don't recognize him
nobody
playing.
knew it was him.
They
I
did not
remember-
catch that it was him playing the Shadow Thief.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do that. I can fly.
When we're together, so can I.
I wish they were dead.
I remember the musicians had a problem with this scene. Because they wanted to hit all the beats.
All the themes and stuff, yeah. And I said, no, it has to be a slow,
Oh, we said it's an
operatic
aria,
build.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an aria, right.
An aria of death.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah, the fake out with the blood, but it's not really blood.
Are those two the mummies in the first episode?
Yes, absolutely.
I never caught it till now.
Of course, it's Shire and Qatar.
Totally. I was, yeah.
That was all planned, dude.
Hey.
Poison. Just as you wished, my liege. I didn't. I never meant. Get out.
My liege, I only...
That's great.
This is so heavy. All this stuff.
Oh, he
is
made me
so
jump
heavy.
at the recording when he did that. I was like, ooh, yeah, I should leave.
You said don't mention sport artists, but I will. Lauren Montgomery.
Yeah, Lauren Montgomery really went to town right here.
She's
I mean,
a treasure.
that drawing of Shire alone was
Totally her.
just,
yeah.
totally her.
And we slowed it down like even more in the
that's
editing
right.
room because it was just too short. It's like, no, I just want to hold on that dead stare for like ever.
Right.
And there they are, just like in the...
Yeah, see, there you go. That's the mummies.
Now you can let go.
Your half set.
Actually, I remember you and me arguing over whether it actually happened.
About what?
About whether the flashback actually happened.
Oh, why?
Whether he just implanted it in
Because
their mind or
my
something.
argument is it happened, but that it wasn't reincarnation. That's the only way I could make it work for me.
That's so funny because I totally think it's reincarnation.
Yep. That's why I set up all the stuff about the machine being broken, and he just sort of implanted himself on the memories.
So
and
why doesn't reincarnation work for you?
I don't believe in it.
Well, neither do I, but it's a cartoon. I don't, there's half
But the
stuff we
flying
don't
is
believe in.
completely cool with me. It's just.
Yeah, they can fly, but they can't be reincarnated.
Yeah, you got to have a rule.
Okay. Gotta have a line. A line you will not cross. So I just think the story is much more powerful if they really are reincarnated, but that's just me.
End it, Katar Hall. Take what you want.
But let the universe howl in despair, for I have returned.
What is your will, my lord?
You know, this season isn't really like the Cadmus arc in any way, shape, or form, but I think it does what we set out to do. We set out just to have fun and, do a much more, crazy, widescreen, gonzo superhero show and, good guys versus bad guys, and I think it does that.
We also got that tour of the DC Universe thing.
Right,
we went to all these really strange DC locations that
Yeah,
had
because we
never
got tired
been.
of being in Gotham City and Metropolis all the time. We said, okay, yeah, what other main locations are there in the DC world? So we got to go to the center of the world and Skartaris and Nanda Parbat.
Central City.
Central City. So yeah, it was just kind of like one last look at the DC world. So this episode, when we were plotting out the arc, I think we got to the point where we were just roughly breaking down the story, and at some point we went, hey, you know what? We could do an entire episode of Justice League without any heroes in it. And we thought that would be kind of a cool stunt. It was something we hadn't done. I mean, we did Task Force X, which was, seen through the eyes of the villains, but we realized we had enough story here to kind of wrap up the whole Legion of Doom side of the story, and that we could have the entire episode without heroes. I mean, the heroes show up at the very end, but they don't speak or anything. And I think it's kind of a neat stunt. And not just a stunt, but it's a decent story.
Yeah, the only other way to pay it off was just to have the heroes fight the villains. And
right.
That would have been just the obvious way to go, but
right.
Now we use the villains to take out half of the other villains.
And we're actually lucky that the fans didn't get disappointed that we didn't do that, because, yeah, we never really did pay off the whole... Well, we did a little bit in To Another Shore. We had... the big three versus all the different, Legion of Doomy guys. But
Dead Reckoning.
Matt, how much did you know about these guys?
Oh, I'm sorry?
I was just asking Matt how much he knew about all these, because a lot of these villains, I didn't even know at this point.
Very, very little. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of villains that in the DC universe that you don't see a lot. I mean, I kind of had a sense of some of them, but Helgramite.
Yeah.
Angleman I kind of knew just because I was on a Wonder Woman kick about, 10 years ago. But
hard habit to break. Yeah.
Yeah, but Helgramite, I still don't really understand.
I don't understand the Helgramite.
Hey, it's cool.
And villains are fun though, just because they'll turn on each other, and you don't really need to, dwell on why.
It's great. The Toy Man takes out somebody.
Well, a major
Killer
league villain,
Frost.
too. Yeah, Killer Frost is pretty formidable, but yeah, he takes her out pretty handily. We had a hard time coming up with new toy gags for him to use that we hadn't done like to death in all his Superman appearances too.
That was a tough day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes like the most simple thing is like doing all those tricks with the yo-yo.
Yeah.
Grodd with a gun.
It's cool. It is a little confusing. Yeah, we had a hard time tracking who was on which side and which team.
Yeah, a couple of people switched teams before the end.
Yeah, we kind of messed up a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty consistent. But it was tough. It was tough to keep track of it all.
Yeah, we kind of ended up with a big list of who's on what team, and of course, halfway through this, it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember these scripts all had appendixes.
Yeah, that's true.
Appendices, you know, where
That's
everybody
right.
is and where they're going, and
Oh, that was even worse the last season during that whole big during Panic in the Sky
Panic
and
in
all
the
that.
Sky.
We had literally had to have a diagram that said, okay, this guy's on the ground and this guy is here in the watchtower, and
we still made one mistake. I can't remember what it
we
was.
made a few. Yeah, there was one guy who's in two different places at
Yeah.
once, impossibly, but.
The secret society hates you.
There's a
Well,
great
this is the
rhythm
scene. This is
section
the
under
sequence
here.
you wanted to see, like all season long, is seeing Grodd
Yeah.
versus Luthor.
Right.
And sure enough, Luthor's getting his butt kicked because he's fighting this big old gorilla. But he goads him into using his power, which of course we've established that Luthor can reverse on everybody. So, all right, it works out great.
Yeah, I kind of remember that Powers Booth at the end of the Dead Man one, he thought that when he got tasered, that was it.
Oh yeah, a lot of people thought he was dead.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
And he was kind of like, I think, surprised when he came back for a few more of these.
That's right.
I love this bit.
Bow down to me. Who is master here?
You are.
Get up. Take 6 steps forward. Get in.
This exchange is just wonderful.
No, it's good because there's Luthor's just so in control. It's really cool.
And this music cue was very specific. You said it had to be almost like they were.
Oh, like lovers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets
wanna
like all
say it,
maudlin
but-
and stuff. Yeah.
Just for the fake out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that little fake moment of sentimentality there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
love
we
Luthor.
never see him no more.
And that's it for him.
Yep.
But he's in hyperspace, so if we have to bring him back,
That's right.
Oh yeah, we could absolutely bring him back if we had to, but
because they're
I
in
don't see how
warp,
we
he
survive.
could be in on the warp place.
No, a lot of villains that bite the dust in this episode. Killer Frost is going to kill about 10 of them right here.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Not Helgramite. No.
There was some major ones too. I think like Parasite's in there, and I can't remember who all else. Everybody's favorite
I like the
Rampage.
snow at the end. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Should have heard some sleigh bells.
Yeah, and anybody she missed, Darkseid takes care of the rest of them.
Well, that was the thing that Toy Man and Killer Frost were fighting each other, but they're both the ones on the final team.
Maybe they just had a spat
They
in
made
the middle of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, maybe not. But baby, you don't ever doubt that I love you, correct?
What's that thing on her neck?
What thing? The tattoo?
Is that a tattoo?
It's a tattoo.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought that was a
Well,
necklace.
in the original comic design, it's actually built into the costume part in her cleavage. But it was really complicated, so I had to simplify it, and I just turned it into a tattoo.
Can't do this without you.
This is horrible. This is like one of the worst deaths anybody's ever had in one of our cartoons.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the screams are almost too real. It's pretty painful.
Well, you mixed it way down. It was really, really terrifying.
It's kind of had to. It's hard to take.
Look at that groovy space. I don't think we ever did space like that before.
That's the stuff from Darkseid
Oh.
from the end of Twilight. It's the nebula.
Oh, it's.
That's why it's so groovy looking like
okay.
that. No, that's from the end of Twilight. After the asteroid blew up, that's what it looked like. So
Darkseid sure is pretty.
his insides are very pretty.
Hold that thought. Do it.
Daniel Day Kim comes in, does his little cameo.
Was he lost?
Mm-hmm.
I have arrived to explain the plot.
That's right.
All right.
Listen carefully. There's a lot of exposition.
So that's what's going on.
This actually works pretty well, I think.
He's creepy.
At this point in the series, it didn't matter if you didn't know who anyone was.
Absolutely.
You're just like, okay.
You just have this weird guy in his Mobius chair just show up out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, I'll buy it. Well, the whole way we came up with to bring Darkseid back is pretty wonky.
Yeah.
If you remember, originally it was going to be the key.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
that's
key
right.
was literally going to be the key. The key was
yeah.
going to be a construct of Brainiacs that we were going to somehow bring
that's
Darkseid
why we used
back.
him so much at the beginning.
That's right, and that's why Corey Burton was playing him, because we were really originally going to have him go from using his key voice to becoming Brainiac, and then somewhere along the line we decided, you know what, that's just really weak.
Yeah.
And somehow or other we came up with this, bogus way of using Tala as the conduit. It kind of works. I mean, in comic book logic, it doesn't make any kind of sense.
Well, I always have this theory that Tala did it on purpose. That's her last screw
That's
you
her
to
revenge.
to
Oh, that's a good
Luthor.
twist. I hadn't thought of that.
I didn't either till after.
Oh, okay. Good retcon there, dude.
No, I think it was before it recorded that you were like, hey. Yeah.
Oh, that was just wrenching.
That's your drawing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Mine?
I can tell you went over it. Whoever's drawing it was, you drew it. That one is.
Oh.
Those fancy new duds.
I know.
It seems I have you to thank for my resurrection. Though your world will suffer slowly, I grant you a quick death.